The rain fell hard that Sunday evening, sharp and cold, like tiny needles striking the earth. People rushed through the bus terminal with bags over their heads, shoes splashing through puddles, faces tight with impatience. But Johnny stood still in the middle of it all, barely noticing the rain soaking his shirt and shoes. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold. From joy. Tightly clenched in his right hand was a folded letter, creased, damp at the edges, but precious beyond words. He had read it again and again, just to be sure his eyes were not lying to him. He had won an all-expenses-paid scholarship to study engineering in Germany. For a moment, Johnny laughed out loud. People passing by glanced at him strangely, but he didn't care. 4 years, he had dreamed of this moment. Sleepless nights, rejected applications, endless hope followed by disappointment. Now, finally, something good had come. His life was about to change. And there was only one person he wanted to tell. Ifyananya, his girlfriend of 5 years. The woman who had stood beside him through hardship, unpaid rent, missed meals, and uncertain tomorrows. The woman who believed in him when nothing else seemed to work. The woman he planned to marry someday. Without thinking twice, Johnny shoved the letter into his pocket and ran out into the rain. He took a bus, then jogged the rest of the way to her apartment, his heart pounding with excitement. Water streamed down his face, but his smile refused to fade. He imagined her reaction already, her laughter, the way she would clap her hands and jump, the way she would hug him tightly and say, "I knew it. I always knew you would make it." When he reached her building, something felt strange. The lights were on, but the place felt quiet. Johnny climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time and stopped in front of her door. His hand froze mid-air. The door was slightly open. That alone was wrong. Ifyananya always locked her door. Always. Maybe she forgot, he murmured, trying to calm the sudden tightness in his chest. He pushed the door open gently. "Ifyananya," he called, stepping inside. "Baby, you won't believe this." His voice echoed back at him. The apartment felt empty. Too empty. The small sitting room looked different. The framed pictures that once filled the wall were gone. The rug she loved was missing. Her favorite chair sat bare, like it had never been used. Johnny's smile slowly faded. He walked deeper into the apartment, his shoes leaving wet marks on the floor. "Ifyananya," he called again, louder this time. No answer. He entered the bedroom. Her wardrobe door was open, and almost empty. Her clothes were gone. Her shoes were gone. Her bags were gone. A strange ringing filled Johnny's ears. His chest tightened as fear slowly replaced joy. He rushed back into the sitting room, his eyes scanning everywhere, hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. Then he saw it. On the center table lay a folded piece of paper. His name was written on it. Johnny. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. His hands trembled as he picked it up. For a moment he hesitated, his heart pounding wildly. Then he unfolded the letter. As his eyes moved across the words, the world around him seemed to slow. Each sentence struck him like a blow. She was leaving. She was tired. She wanted comfort, security, peace. She had chosen another life. Another man. Collins. Johnny's breath caught in his throat. Collins, his closest friend. The man who knew his struggles. The man who had eaten at his table, laughed with him, shared dreams with him. Johnny's knees gave way. He sank slowly onto the floor, the letter slipping from his fingers. His chest felt heavy, like something had crushed it from the inside. He tried to breathe, but the air refused to come. The rain continued to fall outside, beating against the windows like a cruel reminder. Everything he had been so excited about moments earlier now felt meaningless. The scholarship, the future, the dreams, all of it seemed distant. Johnny stared at the empty room, his eyes burning but dry. No tears came. Only shock. Only pain. That night, something inside him broke. And in the silence that followed, something else, quiet, wounded, and dangerous, was born. 3 years can change everything. For Ifyananya, those 3 years had stripped her of comfort, pride, and peace. The beautiful life Collins had promised her did not last. What began with expensive dinners and soft words slowly turned cold. He grew distant. His phone was always locked. His excuses became endless. Then one day, he simply left. No explanation. No goodbye. No apology. The man she had chosen over love vanished like smoke. Now, Ifinanya lived in a single cramped room at the back of a noisy street. The walls were thin, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the air always smelled of damp clothes. Every morning, she woke up tired before the day even began. She worked as a waitress in a small cafe near the roadside. The uniform was simple: faded black trousers, a white shirt, and an apron that never quite came clean. She tied her hair back tightly every day, not because she wanted to look neat, but because she no longer cared how she looked. Regret followed her everywhere. As she wiped tables and served customers, her mind replayed memories she wished she could erase. Johnny's laughter. His patience. His belief in her. She remembered the night she left him, how confident she had felt, how certain she was that she had made the right choice. Now, that certainty tasted bitter. Every night, she lay on her small mattress staring at the ceiling, whispering apologies to a man who could no longer hear her. Then one quiet evening, everything changed. The cafe was unusually calm. Only a few customers sat scattered around, sipping drinks and scrolling through their phones. Ifinanya moved slowly between tables, her body tired, her mind far away. That was when the door opened. She did not look up at first. She wiped her hands on her apron and turned, then froze. Johnny. He stood by the entrance, rain droplets still clinging to his jacket. He wore a neatly tailored suit, polished shoes, and a wristwatch that caught the light. He looked taller somehow. Stronger. His posture alone spoke of confidence. Success clung to him effortlessly. Ifinanya's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought she was imagining him. She blinked hard. He was still there. Johnny's eyes scanned the cafe, calm and steady, until they found her. Their gazes met. Her hands began to shake. "Johnny!" she whispered, the name slipping out before she could stop herself. He paused, clearly surprised, but said nothing. Her chest tightened as emotion rushed forward like a flood. Without thinking, she walked toward him, her knees weak, her eyes already burning with tears. "Please," she said softly. "Can I talk to you?" Johnny studied her in silence. The man who once rushed to her side now stood still, unreadable. "Just a minute," she added quickly, afraid he might walk away. "Please." After a long pause, he nodded. They sat at a small table by the window. Ifinanya struggled to speak at first. The words tangled in her throat. When she finally opened her mouth, tears spilled over. "I was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." Johnny listened without interrupting. She confessed everything: the loneliness, the regret, the shame. She admitted that money had blinded her, that she had mistaken comfort for happiness. "I think about you every day," she said. "Every single day." Johnny remained quiet. He did not rush her. He did not comfort her. He simply listened. When she finished speaking, she wiped her tears with trembling fingers and looked at him, waiting. The silence stretched between them. Then Johnny smiled. It was slow, controlled, almost gentle. "All right," he said calmly. She looked up, confused. "We can talk," he added. Ifinanya felt her heart leap. For the first time in 3 years, hope returned. She did not know what that smile truly meant. She only knew that Johnny had said yes. News traveled fast. It did not take long before people began whispering that Johnny and Ifinanya were together again. Some were shocked. Some were curious. Others shook their heads, unable to understand why Johnny would take her back after what she had done. Johnny did not seem to care. From the outside, he looked like a man deeply in love. He treated Ifinanya like a queen. Flowers arrived at her door almost every morning, fresh, colorful, and expensive. He bought her dresses she never imagined she could wear again. He took her out for long drives at night, the city lights glowing around them as soft music played in the car. He listened when she talked. He laughed when she laughed. He held her hand like he was afraid to lose her again. To Ifinanya, it felt unreal. After years of regret and shame, happiness had returned to her life. She began to believe that maybe fate had given her a second chance. Maybe love really could survive betrayal. Johnny showed her his new world. He took her to meetings where powerful people greeted him with respect. He spoke confidently about businesses, contracts, and future plans. She watched him in awe, hardly recognizing the man she once left behind. Then he took her to the land where his mansion was being built. The structure was massive, still unfinished but already impressive. Tall walls, wide rooms, and strong foundations stood proudly against the sky. "This will be our home," Johnny said calmly. Ifyinanya's heart fluttered. She imagined waking up beside him there, building a life together, starting over. She walked through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing, already filling the space with dreams. Johnny watched her quietly. His face showed no emotion. Weeks passed. Johnny never missed a call, never forgot a date, never raised his voice. He was patient, gentle, and attentive. When Ifyinanya apologized again for the past, he simply nodded and told her to focus on the present. "You're here now," he said. "That's what matters." Those words comforted her deeply. Then one evening, during a quiet drive, Johnny pulled over at a peaceful spot overlooking the city. The sky was dark, filled with stars. He turned to her. "Marry me," he said. Ifyinanya gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth as tears rushed down her cheeks. For a moment, she could not speak. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Johnny nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." She broke down completely, sobbing as she threw her arms around him. "Yes," she cried. "Yes, I will." She thanked him again and again for forgiving her. She promised she would never hurt him again. She swore she would spend the rest of her life making it up to him. Johnny held her tightly. "I know," he said softly. He kissed her forehead gently. Ifyinanya closed her eyes, feeling safe, loved, and chosen. She believed she had been saved. But when she finally pulled back and looked at him, something about Johnny's smile felt different. It was calm. Too calm. There was no joy in his eyes. No excitement. Just a quiet depth she could not understand. She brushed the feeling aside. Love, she told herself, sometimes grows quietly. What she did not know was that forgiveness was not what lived behind Johnny's smile. What had begun inside him was not healing. It was something darker. And it had already taken root. That same night, after Johnny dropped Ifyinanya off and watched her disappear behind her door, he did not go home to rest. Instead, he drove straight to his unfinished mansion. The building stood quietly on the edge of the land, tall and silent, surrounded by darkness. From the outside, it looked like a dream still waiting to be completed. But beneath it, hidden from every eye, lay something far older than bricks and cement. Johnny parked his car and stepped inside. His footsteps echoed through the empty halls as he moved through the house without turning on any lights. He knew exactly where he was going. He reached a door at the far end of the ground floor and opened it. A narrow staircase led downward. The air changed immediately. It grew colder, heavier. Johnny descended slowly, his face calm, his expression unreadable. At the bottom of the stairs stood an iron door, thick, old, and heavy. He pulled out a key from his pocket and unlocked it. The door creaked open, releasing a strange smell of wax, smoke, and something darker. Inside the room, candles burned quietly, their flames flickering as though breathing. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes that seemed to move on their own. At the center of the room stood an altar. It was made of dark stone, stained with old marks that could not be washed away. Symbols were carved deeply into the surface and the surrounding walls, strange and unfamiliar. The altar looked ancient, as though it had existed long before the house was ever built. Johnny stepped closer. He knelt slowly, respectfully, as if standing before something powerful and alive. From his jacket, he brought out a small wooden box. He opened it carefully and removed a photograph. It was Ifyinanya. The picture showed her smiling softly, unaware, untouched by fear or truth. Johnny placed the photograph inside the box and set it gently on the altar. "I brought her back," he whispered. His voice was low, steady, and without emotion. For a moment, nothing happened. The candles flickered once, then twice. A cold wind swept through the room, though there were no windows or doors open. The flames bent sharply, casting long, twisted shadows across the walls. Johnny did not flinch. He bowed his head. "I kept my word," he continued. "She returned to me willingly." The silence stretched. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, a voice answered. It did not come from a mouth. It seemed to echo from the walls themselves, deep and slow, vibrating through the floor beneath Johnny's knees. "Good." Johnny closed his eyes. "The bond is restored," the voice continued. "What was lost has been returned." The candles burned brighter. Johnny swallowed and spoke again. "I did everything you asked," he said quietly. Another pause followed, heavier than the last. Then the voice spoke once more, colder this time. "The day of sacrifice is near." Johnny remained kneeling. He did not ask questions. He did not plead. He did not hesitate. The altar pulsed faintly, as though responding to the words spoken. Johnny stood slowly, closing the wooden box and placing it back exactly where it had been. He turned away without looking back, as if he already knew what was coming. As he reached the iron door, the candles suddenly steadied, their flames returning to normal. The room fell silent again. Johnny locked the door behind him and climbed the stairs, his footsteps echoing upward. Above him, the mansion stood empty and unfinished. Below him, something ancient waited patiently. And Johnny walked away knowing one thing clearly. What he had started could no longer be undone. Their wedding day arrived like a festival. The whole town turned out. Cars filled the streets. Music played from every corner. Laughter, chatter, and celebration filled the air as people gathered to witness what many called a miracle. Johnny and Ifinanya were getting married. Some guests came out of happiness. Others came out of curiosity. A few came out of disbelief. But no one could deny that the wedding was grand. The decorations were rich and beautiful. White flowers lined the entrance. Long fabrics flowed across the walls. The smell of food drifted everywhere, heavy and inviting. It was the kind of wedding people would talk about for years. Johnny stood calmly at the front, dressed neatly, his face composed. He greeted guests with quiet confidence, shaking hands, exchanging smiles. Ifinanya, however, felt different. As she sat alone in the room where she was getting dressed, her heart would not settle. A strange heaviness pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe properly. She tried to brush it off as nerves. "It's just cold feet," she whispered to herself. She stood before the mirror as the final touches were made to her wedding gown. The veil was light and beautiful as it rested over her head. She smiled weakly at her reflection. Then she blinked. For a split second, the veil in the mirror was no longer white. It was red, dark, like blood. Her heart skipped violently. She gasped and touched the veil, pulling it forward. It was white again. Clean. Perfect. Her hands trembled. "Focus," she muttered. "You're just tired." Moments later, as she walked down the hallway toward the ceremony, her eyes caught sight of the large cross hanging inside the church. It tilted suddenly in her vision, twisting slightly, as if turning away from her. She stopped walking. Her breath grew shallow. Someone brushed past her, and the cross returned to normal. Her pulse raced. During the ceremony, as vows were exchanged and applause filled the room, Ifinanya felt as though she was standing outside her own body. She smiled when she was expected to smile. She spoke when spoken to. But inside, a quiet fear continued to grow. As the crowd gathered for photographs, a strange man stood among them. She did not recognize him. He was tall, dressed plainly, his face partly hidden by shadow. As she turned, he leaned close and whispered softly in her ear. "You should not be here." She spun around. He was gone. No one around her noticed anything unusual. Laughter continued. Cameras flashed. Music played. Ifenanya's smile shook, but she said nothing. That night, after the celebration ended and guests departed, Ifenanya expected closeness, comfort, joy. But Johnny was distant. He barely spoke. He sat quietly, staring toward the window, the moonlight touching his face. "I thought we'd be together tonight," Ifinanya said softly. Johnny turned to her and smiled. In time, he replied. Before she could say anything else, he stood, kissed her forehead gently, and walked away. As midnight approached, Johnny returned to his unfinished mansion alone. He descended into the basement once more. The altar was waiting. Johnny placed a small lock of Ifinanya's hair on the altar. He laid her photograph beside it. Then, carefully, he placed a written copy of her wedding vows on the stone surface. The candles burned brighter. The air grew cold. Johnny knelt. I have given her fully, he whispered. The shadows shifted. The voice answered. At dawn she dies. Johnny bowed his head. The altar pulsed softly, and the night continued to breathe in silence. At exactly 4 a.m., Ifinanya woke up suddenly. Her heart was racing. The room was dark and silent, yet something felt wrong. The air was heavy, pressing against her chest. She sat up slowly, listening. Then she heard it, soft footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. Johnny, she called out, her voice shaking. There was no answer. She slipped out of bed and moved toward the door. As she opened it, cold night air rushed in, carrying a strange smell, smoke, metal, and something bitter. Her breath caught. Outside, hooded men stood in a wide circle around the house. Their faces were hidden. Torches burned in their hands, their flames flickering wildly. Some held knives. Others stood perfectly still, chanting under their breath. At the center of them all stood Johnny. He was calm. Too calm. In his hand was a dark goblet, filled to the brim with thick liquid that glistened under the firelight. Blood. Johnny! Ifinanya screamed, running toward him. What is this? What is happening? He looked at her slowly. His face showed no anger, no joy, only emptiness. You should never have come back, he said quietly. Her legs went weak. What are you saying? She cried. Johnny, please, this isn't funny. Stop this. The chanting grew louder. She fell to her knees, tears pouring freely now. She begged him to stop. She reminded him of their past, their love, their vows. Johnny did not move. His eyes changed. They turned dark, black. The man she knew was gone. The hooded men closed in. No. Please. Ifinanya screamed, reaching for him. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Johnny raised the goblet and drank. Then he nodded. The knife was raised. The sound that followed was sharp and final. The night swallowed her screams. Silence followed. By the time the sun rose, everything was gone. The house where Ifinanya died was torn down completely. The ground was cleared. Not a trace of what had happened remained. Workers arrived early, silent and efficient, as if they knew exactly what to do. Within weeks, Johnny's mansion began to rise. Tall walls climbed toward the sky. Strong pillars were planted deep into the earth. Concrete was poured where blood had once soaked the ground. The foundation was sealed. The mansion grew fast, stronger and grander than anyone expected. People marveled at its speed and size. Some whispered that Johnny was blessed. Others said luck had finally chosen him. Johnny stood on the land one evening, watching the structure grow. He closed his eyes. Power flowed through him, thick, heavy, undeniable. Doors opened for him. Money came easily. His name carried weight wherever it was spoken. But peace did not follow. The land beneath his feet felt cold. The air around the mansion never felt still. At night, when the workers had left and silence settled in, Johnny sometimes felt something move beneath the ground, something restless. He ignored it. He told himself it was finished. The sacrifice was complete. Power had come. But deep within the foundation, something remained. And peace never did. Johnny rose quickly after that. His name spread everywhere. People spoke of him with admiration and envy. Contracts came easily. Money flowed without resistance. His mansion became a symbol of power and success, standing tall and flawless from the outside. To many, Johnny was untouchable. Not long after, he remarried. Her name was Vanessa. She was young, gentle, and innocent, with bright eyes that still believed in goodness. She moved into the mansion believing she had married a successful man with a complicated past but a promising future. She did not know the truth. At first, the house felt beautiful. The floors shone. The walls gleamed. The rooms were wide and luxurious. Vanessa walked through the halls in wonder, imagining the life she would build there. But the house remembered. It began quietly. One night, Vanessa heard faint whispers behind the walls. She told herself it was the wind. Another night, she noticed dark stains on the floor that disappeared by morning. She tried to ignore the cold that followed her from room to room. Then the mirrors began to crack. One shattered without warning as she passed by, the sound sharp and sudden. Another split down the middle, as though something inside it wanted to come out. Johnny pretended not to notice. But he did. Soon, blood began to seep from the walls. Thin lines at first. Then heavier, dripping slowly like tears. The smell of iron filled the air. Vanessa screamed. Johnny rushed to her side, lying with practiced ease, telling her it was nothing. A plumbing issue. A fault in the building. But even he could no longer deny it. Ifeananya had returned. Not as a woman. Not as a bride. But as something driven by vengeance. The house groaned at night, its walls trembling softly. Whispers echoed through the corridors, calling Johnny's name again and again. Shadows moved where no one stood. Vanessa disappeared. One morning, she was simply gone. No note. No trace. Only silence. Johnny unraveled. Sleep abandoned him. His eyes sank deep into his face. He wandered the halls at night, muttering to himself, burning incense, whispering apologies to empty rooms. Then the altar burned itself alive. Flames erupted below the mansion, without smoke or warmth, consuming everything Johnny had built his pact upon. The symbols vanished. The stone cracked. The room collapsed inward as if swallowing itself. Johnny screamed. By dawn, the man who once commanded respect was gone. The townspeople found him naked in the middle of the market, laughing uncontrollably. His hair was wild. His eyes were empty. His body trembled as if he was cold, though the sun burned hot above him. He laughed and laughed, speaking to no one. "I married her twice," he muttered. "Once for love. Once for blood. But she married me for eternity." No one could reason with him. The mansion was abandoned soon after. Doors sealed. Gates locked. The land grew quiet and feared. Johnny disappeared, vanishing like smoke, leaving behind rumors and questions no one dared answer. Until today, people swear that at midnight, the mansion comes alive. Lights flicker. Footsteps echo. And a woman in a blood-soaked wedding gown walks through its halls, her veil trailing behind her. If you listen closely, they say you can hear her whisper softly. I do. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.